Hi guys, welcome back to the tutorial series in ABAP Web Dynpro. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover casting in ABAP OOPS. Before I get into different kinds of casting available in ABAP OOPS, I'll show you, the classes and interfaces that I've created for this tutorial. I've created an interface with name YF underscore interface 1. Okay, and it has a method and an attribute. So as you guys know, interfaces, it does not have implementation, so this is only definition, right? So I've created three more classes: YCL underscore class 1, which implements this interface. Okay, and it also has a own method called method 1. And if you see the code inside the method, where it is a simple one-line code, what I'm doing basically is I'm just passing a simple text as an to export parameter ex underscore string, okay, which says this is method in class 1. Similarly, I've created another class with the name YCL underscore class 2. It also implements the interface YF underscore interface 1 and has a method 2, which is again having a similar code as method 1 in class 1. It says this is method in class 2. And I have another method called class 3. This does not implement the interface, it just has one method. And if you see the code inside the method, I have an import parameter called iv underscore number and export parameter evo underscore ref, which refers to the YF underscore interface 1 interface. Okay, and the code is pretty much very straightforward. I've defined two variables, reference variables. One refers to class 1, one refers to class 2. And based on the number that comes to this method, I'm creating an instance of class 1 if it is number 1. If it is number 2, then I'm creating an instance of class 2. And then I'm assigning the class 2 reference to the export parameter. Okay, so that's straightforward. Let's go back to the program here. Okay, here what I've done, I've declared four variables. First three refers to the classes, and the fourth one refers to the interface. And I have a parameter for the report p underscore number, where I can enter the number. Okay, so there are two kinds of casting available in ABAP OOPS. One is narrow casting. So as the name suggests, here what I'm doing, I'm assigning LOCL1 to LO underscore IF. So the LOCL1 implements LO underscore IF, as I've seen, as I've shown you. YCL class 1 implements YF underscore interface 1. And so the LOCL1 has also has an extra method called method 1, right? Other than the methods and attributes that were part of YF underscore interface 1, YCL class 1 has extra method, so it has more wider functionality than interface. So that's what narrow casting means. I'm going from a wider scope to a narrow scope. Okay, and the only requirement for doing this, the only requirement for assigning this like this is this class at the right hand side should implement the interface here, right? Only then this is possible. Okay, now can I do this? So what I've done here is I'm assigning LOCL3, which refers to class 3, to the interface variable. Again, LOCL refers to YCL class 3, which it does not implement this interface. So is this possible? Let's see. I'll do a syntax check here, and I get an error saying that the type of LO underscore CL3 cannot be converted to the type of LO underscore IF. So this is not allowed in ABAP. So just comment out. Can I do this? So this is an exact opposite of the first statement, right? So I'm assigning an interface reference to a class reference variable. Even this is not possible. I get a syntax error saying a type of L1 underscore IF cannot be converted to L1 underscore CL1. So these two statements fail the syntax check at design time, because I'll just comment it out. Now my aim in this program is basically use the method in class 3, the getRefIf method that I've just shown, and get the reference of either class 1 or class 2 based on the p underscore number, and then call the specific methods that are part of the different classes. So for example, the method 1 is part of class 1, method 2 is part of class 2, right? So how this is achieved is, if you see the L1 underscore IF refers to here YF underscore interface 1, right? And YF underscore 1 does not have either method 1 or method 2. So based on the number that I'm receiving in this method, I'm creating a different instance of the classes. Okay, so the output of this method is basically either class 1 instance or class 2 instance. So that I know because I've written the code here to exactly do that. So I'm writing an if condition. If p underscore number equal to 1, I know if p underscore number is 1, then I'm going to get an instance of class 1 in this variable. Okay, but this is an interface reference variable, right? It does not refer to the YCL underscore class 1, right? So L1 underscore IF is YF underscore interface 1. So this does not have method 1 in it. So I want to call a method 1 in class 1. So what I need to do is, widening cast, basically move from a narrower functionality, a less functionality, to a variable which has more functionality, right? So now if you see here, this statement and this statement look similar, except there's a question mark extra, right? This is not allowed, that we've already seen it. So to make sure that assignment is possible, the SAP gives a widening cast operator here. So what does it do is it basically the operator, the process of checking the validity of assignment is shifted to runtime when we use the widening cast. So at the design time, the system won't check whether this is the possible or not. It checks only at runtime. So at runtime, we have to make sure this variable contains instance of class 1, otherwise it will dump, right? But I'm 100% sure that when I pass 1, I'm going to get an instance of class 1. So this will work at the runtime, and then I'm calling the method 1 here. Okay, so why I'm doing all this mumbo jumbo of widening cast and all this stuff? I can simply define two export parameters here. So the first one refers to class 1, second one refers to class 2, and then when it is 1, I'll pass the instance of class 1 to the first export parameter, and instead of class 2 to the second export parameter if the IV underscore number is 2. So that way I can have two different parameters here. One will be the class 2, the second one will be class 2, and then I can call the methods. Why I'm doing using an interface reference variable here, and then doing a widening cast to a class variable, and then calling the methods. Why I'm doing all this is because let's assume, like, in future I have to extend this code, and I have to instantiate like 10 other classes, 10 different classes in future, based on the import parameter. Now if I go by the approach that I just suggested, having two different export parameters, each referring to different classes, particular classes, then I have to change the signature of this method, right? Otherwise it's not possible. And also I need to change the code present in the report here. So every time I extend the code here, instantiating new classes, I have to change the signature here, and then I have to change the program in the code wherever the method is used, basically. So to avoid that, changing the signatures and doing code change in wherever the method is used, what we can do is we just declare a generic it's not generic, define a variable which refers to an object which is basically has as a lesser scope. Okay, then I instantiate whatever class I need, and the requirement, as I said, is that class should implement this interface, so otherwise it's not possible. Okay, so assuming that requirement is met, I can instantiate those classes and then pass the instance of that classes to this variable, and this is narrowing cast. If you see, I am passing a class reference to a variable which refers to the interface. This is absolutely okay in ABAP. That's what I've shown in the first statement here, passing the class to a reference variable, to an interface variable. So this is narrow casting. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a narrow cast in the method, so I can squeeze in all the references to the classes, and that class should implement that interface. So I can pass all the instances to a single variable which refers to the common interface of all the classes. Okay. So that is called narrowing cast. You're squeezing in all the instances into one general variable. So once it comes out of the method, what I'm doing here is I'm again doing a widening cast. So now I'm distributing that instance to a specific variable, a specific class variable, which I can use it. For example, here I'm squeezing it into L1 underscore CL1 because I want to call a method 1 in that class. Here I'm doing it to L1 underscore CL2 because I want to call method 2. So the output of this method can be converted, can be casted to any of the classes that I want to, given that that class implements this interface. Okay, and also we have to make sure that in this method, right, we're actually passing the instance of this class in this variable. Okay, so if you pass some other class, for example, let's assume that there is a class 4, and then inside the method where I said class 3, I'm instantiating class 4, and then here doing it LOCL1 widening cast equal to LOCL4, that won't work. Right? So you have to pass the instance of exactly the class that you're going to use. That otherwise you'll get an up. Okay, so that's how widening cast works. Right? Basically, I'll just repeat it. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to I am creating instances of different classes, okay, which implements the one common interface. Okay, and then those instances I'm passing to export parameter, which refers to the interface, okay, which is common among all these classes. So once that instance comes out, I'm doing again the widening cast to a specific class that I want to use, and then calling whatever method I want in that class. So this is a concept of widening cast. Okay, now how do we use this in ABAP Webdynpro? So we're talking about tutorial series on Web Dynpro, so I have to link this concept to ABAP Webdynpro. Okay, so let's for that I've created a component called YTest, and this has it's very straightforward. I have included 3 UI elements: text 1, button 1, and table. So text 1 is a text view UI element, button 1 is a button UI element, and the table is a table. So my requirement is very simple here. I want to hide button 1 when I run this application. I want to see only text view and the table, nothing else. Okay, I want to hide it in button 1. So I've done it in the modify method, so I'll go to that code and show you what I've done here. Come on. Now in the modify method, if you see the import parameter, there is a view import parameter which refers to if wd underscore view. So at the runtime, this parameter will have an instance of a class, right, which implements this interface, because the interface does not have any implementation, so you cannot actually call the methods of this interface and do something. So runtime, you'll get some class. To be specific, it's a cl underscore wd underscore ui underscore element. So that instance is what you get in this view, and that class has a method called get underscore element. Okay, so I'll go to that. So this is the get underscore element method of this interface. So it has import parameter as id, and the export parameter is element, which refers to some interface. Okay, now what I want to do, as I said, I want to hide the button, right, when I see the so the code to do that is, first we need to get the reference of the UI element, and then, as I said in my earlier tutorials in Web Dynpro, every UI element in Web Dynpro has a corresponding class associated with it. So the button class is cl underscore wd button. So all the dynamic methods that you want to use with buttons are part of this class. Okay, so when I call this method get underscore element of the view and pass the button 1, the id of the button, right, so I get an instance of the class cl underscore wd button, and then I can use the set underscore visible method of that class to hide the button. Okay, now how the widening cast is used here. Okay, so let me compare the get underscore element method with the method I've written in the YCL underscore class 3. Okay, so the get underscore L method takes ID as the input, and the method I've written in class 3 takes a number, right? So based on the number I'm instantiating different classes. Okay, now in the same way, in the class which implements this interface CLWD UI element, SAP what does, based on the ID of the UI element that you passed, it determines what is the type of UI element. So for example, I passed button 1, so the button 1 can be a button, or it can be a text view, or it can be an input field. So but SAP has a way to determine, so what does the ID corresponds to what UI element. So it determines, okay, it is a button. Then what it is, creates an instance of button class CLWD underscore button. Okay, but then this method does not have, if you see, this method does not have any export parameter which refers to CLWD button. Right? It has only export parameter which refers to if WD view element, as we have in YCL class 3. Even though I'm instantiating class 1 and class 2, I haven't created a specific export parameter for those classes, for those instances. So I've created a general variable which refers to YF underscore interface, and the only requirement was the CL1 and CL2 implements this interface. Similarly, the CLWD button, right, implements if WD view element interface, so which is nothing but the export parameter. So inside the method, what they do, they create an instance of the button, but they assign that instance to this element. So they do a narrow cast because they're coming from a CLWD class which has a more methods to a variable which refers to this interface. So they do a narrow cast and they pass the variable, pass the instance. So what I've done in this method is, once I receive the instance, I'm again doing a widening cast. Why do we do widening cast is to make sure that I can access the actual methods, the specific methods are part of this class, which are part of this class. So I have to do, that's what exactly I'm doing here. So this method here, view get element, will give me the instance of button1 class, right, CLWD button, in a variable which refers to an interface. Okay. So from that variable I need to move to a wider perspective. So I'm doing a widening cast here and then moving that to CLWD button. Now I can use a set visible method which is part of this class. This method, you see, is not part of if WD view element here. So it's only part of the button class, right? So then I can use set visible method and hide the button. I've written similar code like for a table also. If you want to get if you want to use get columns method of the table class CLW table, what you need to do is you need to just pass the table ID here, right, and then get the instance out of this method and then do a widening cast to the actual table class and then call this method. So let me just so this is like before I've written the code. So let me just refresh it and see how it behaves. So you see a button 1 here now. Let me just refresh it. See, I don't see a button. Button 1 is hidden now, right? So the approach that SAP has followed will make it possible tomorrow if SAP introduces a new UI element, right, and it creates a new class associated with it, right? For example, let's say the new element name is new, so it will create a class which is like CL underscore WD underscore new, and then it implements this interface if WD view element, and then creates the specific methods which are part of that particular UI element, and they don't have to change, you don't have to make any changes to this interface, the signature here, or the signature for this method, right? Because this method, the export parameter refers to a very generic interface. So what they will do inside the actual method that implements this get underscore element, they will write piece of code which instances the new UI element class, and then they will pass that instance. They'll basically squeeze in that instance. They will do a narrowcast of that instance to element here, right? And then what we need to do is basically whatever we did for button, we create another variable which says l1 underscore new, type ref to clwd new, and then use the same method, right? Same method, and it will work perfectly. So that's how widening cast is used, right, to make it more generic. Okay, so I hope I'm not confused you guys. So that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.